What would you say is the most standout difference to you in your day-to-day now?
Probably looking at people rather than making the profit for the boss man upstairs. When you're at the coalface, you can't think of how much is this drug I'm about to give them. It's just they need it, so I'm going to explain what it does and give it to them if it's appropriate.
This is Life and Faith, a podcast where we seek to elevate the conversation about the things that matter, or should matter, deeply human questions about meaning, purpose and hope. No matter what you believe, we hope you'll join us exploring the complexities, the struggles and the joys of life and faith. Welcome to Life and Faith from CPX. I'm Simon Smart. Changing careers can be a daunting prospect. Shifting into something new, particularly if you've been doing a job for a long time, retraining and landing among people who are experienced and comfortable in their roles when you're brand new and feeling all at sea is not something many of us would relish. But, as we'll hear today, it can also be very rewarding. These days, young people are told they're likely to have multiple careers in their lifetimes. So today on Life and Faith, career changes. We're going to talk to 3 people who've made the jump for a late career change and lived to tell the tale. So let's meet them. We'll first hear what these 3 were doing before making a big change. First up, Ben Somerville.
So I was a licensed customs broker, which most people think that's the uniform people that stop you and ask what's in your bag. Yeah, but it's basically just trade facilitation, helping importers and exporters minimise their duty and GST and get their goods quickly and efficiently. So it's pretty dry work, but it's interesting because there's a lot of variety about what people bring in and out of the country. So that's been what I've been doing for probably the last 15, 20 years.
So is that a government role or is it working in...
No, it's a private. We work with the government.
Yes.
So we work with Border Force and quarantine, and I work for DHL, the yellow vans that drive around, people might have seen. And yeah, just work collaboratively with them to stop the illicit stuff and let the legitimate trade flow, kind of, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Was that satisfying work?
It was. Yeah, it was good. I think it was good just getting policy through, and especially with COVID, a lot of people switched to online buying, so it changed the model of how goods go in and out, and just being involved in how that looks and flows was satisfying. It was good.
Next, let me introduce Nicola de Vries.
When I left school, I was doing music and performing. I was a singer, so I worked a lot with a theatre company for International Year of Youth. I went and ran away with a circus after year 12. Then I went to university. I started out in the drama centre in Flinders Uni. Then I ended up working in bands and performing with 2 other women. We had our own trio and we did theatre cabaret. And then we moved to Sydney and worked for a number of years really doing that, most of my 20s. And then I went back to uni, to the Conservatorium of Sydney when I was about 28 and did a Masters of Performance in voice. Then I had a baby at the end of that, and then I worked in corporate theatre because that was great work for when you had a small child. You could leave the child at home at night with my husband and off I'd go and perform, and we'd do corporate shows. So that's really what I did for a number of years, and then we moved to America for 7 years and I wasn't performing while I was there.
And with that work that you're doing, all that performance, you loved that? It was satisfying work? You enjoyed it?
It was great.
Yeah.
It was really good. I loved it. Particularly I loved doing theatre and cabaret when I was, in my 20s and things like that. That was fantastic. We travelled all over Australia and did shows at different fringe festivals, and it was great fun. Yeah. But then when I'd had our first child and I was doing the corporate stuff, that was great too, because I worked with, again, this fabulous woman and we wrote shows. A woman that worked for us, she knew I was a performer and she said, I've got these friends. They don't think they can find a funny opera singer. And she said, I told them about you. And I went, oh, that's cute. So I went off and auditioned, and basically we used to rewrite operatic arias with words about particular CEOs or if there was something happening at a company. Then we also did parody shows at a restaurant called Yippee-I-O in Crown Street, which isn't there anymore, sort of theatre restaurant, which was hilarious. Particularly every time I had a baby, I'd do it and I'd be waddling around between people singing and, doing impersonations of people. I think when we got back from America, our middle child, she was doing her final years of school, and our youngest child was diagnosed as neurodivergent. And it was just a time when I suddenly thought, I don't know if I want to be a showgirl anymore. I don't want if I want to keep doing that. It's kind of exhausting. And I still loved singing. I sing with friends. I go to a local church, St John's at Glebe, and I sing there. Okay. So I was still making music with friends, but not getting paid for it.
Ali Joy is an old friend of mine. She was a hairdresser for 20 years, but has now become a nurse. And as you'll hear, that move was a long time in the making.
I still absolutely love hairdressing, and I never wanted to change my career because I was unhappy. But when I was 20, I went to Malawi in Africa and went and visited hospitals with a group of nurses, and that really impacted me. And I sort of started to think more and more about, nursing throughout periods of my life. So I read a book called The Hospital by the River, written by Catherine Hamlin. That was like my late 20s, and that really impacted me too. It was about a couple that went to Ethiopia, started a women's hospital over there, and I remember that book had a profound influence on my heart. Then I had a friend, Nerida, who went and volunteered on a floating hospital ship called the Mercy Ship in West Africa. That was sort of maybe my early 30s, and I've got faith in my own heart, and so does she. So she asked me, could you be praying for me while I do that? So I began to get these messages of people that were receiving surgery in nations where surgery isn't an option for them through this medical ship. And then I thought to myself, one day I'll be a nurse and I'll go and do that. And then I volunteered on that ship as a hairdresser in 2018, and that really impacted me more and more.
We've had the people from the Mercy Ships on Life and Faith. That was a good story to hear. But what happened for you there? What did you see? How did it change you?
Oh, it was amazing. You see people so for those that don't know what the Mercy Ship is, it's a floating hospital ship. Imagine a big old ferry vessel that's been fully converted into a hospital. So it has like fully functioning wards, medical staff, and there's 550 people that live on board. So there's a lot of other jobs as well. There's a fully functioning school on board. It's like a whole township, really. And they park the ship in a port for 10 months and serve the nation of maybe Guinea or Sierra Leone or Senegal, anywhere they can reach by ship, Madagascar. And it's a wonderful organisation. So there's one job as a hairdresser, and I applied for that when I was actually living in Europe at the time and wanted to just fill in a month while I was waiting for a work visa. And got to go and just got so impacted by not only seeing the patients. So you have a lot of people that have been burnt. Say your child gets burnt hands at 18 months old because they've touched the fire that you're cooking on, and then their hands are just stuck and burnt and unable to be used, and they're now 5 years old, so they'll come on. They have people with facial tumours and a lot of orthopaedic surgery because of malnutrition. People get given their eyesight back because of cataract surgery. There's a collection of surgeries they do, especially facial tumours. It's quite common over in West Africa. So you see all the patients receiving care, and then all my clients as a hairdresser there were the anaesthetists and the nurses that have been there for many years. So yeah, you come back changed.
Ben's career change, like Ali's, was into the health sector and also at the sharp end of things.
So I have just very recently graduated from a Bachelor of Paramedicine, and I'm about to become a on-road paramedic.
So it's a massive change.
You could say that.
Why the change?
Look, it's something I've always wanted to do. I looked at it about 10 years ago, seriously, but the kids were still at school and my wife had just started her own business, and it just seemed a bit indulgent, a little bit irresponsible to do that at that time. So I kind of just parked it and put it on the shelf. And I blame my daughter a little bit because she did midwifery and loved that. And so I saw her enjoy that and I thought, maybe it's not too late. And then, my wife just said, stop talking about it and give it a crack. So that was the impetus for starting. And then it was about COVID when I did a diploma of emergency healthcare. I thought, I'll try that just to see if it's a romantic notion or whether
So dipping a toe a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I did that and absolutely loved it. So I thought, well, next logical step is apply to university, which I was a little bit dubious I'd even get picked at my age and stage. And
So for the listeners, you're not you're still a very youthful, Ben, but you've got adult kids, you've been around a bit.
I've had a few laps around the sun. Yeah, absolutely. So it was one of those things where I thought, I'll apply to uni, see if I get in. And it was quite amazing. The day that I resigned from DHL, I was accepted. The same day, I was accepted into uni. So that was kind of, I thought, well, there's a plan in here somewhere. So, yeah.
What's involved here? So you've done that diploma, then you've gone to university. What, a 2 or 3 year thing, isn't it?
Yeah, so the Bachelor of Paramedicine is a 3-year degree, and I did a 2-year accelerated course, which was, they said at the beginning that we'll own you for 2 years, and they weren't lying. It was pretty full on. Yeah. It's about 500 hours of on-road placement that goes with that as well during that period. So it was quite intense, but it was something that was enjoyable, and I was a little bit self-conscious, I suppose, starting the degree thinking, oh no, I'm going to be the grandpa sitting up the back, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. Once I was there, and we were all there to learn, and I met some wonderful people who I hope to maintain friendships with, everyone from school leavers to people my age and older. So, yeah.
So there were a few people who,
believe it or not,
a bit like you, making the later change.
Yeah, there was, and we kind of bonded a bit together and had a bit of a laugh about our fears and foibles, but it was, it's been really good.
Nicola also made a significant change in her job through a bit of a winding path from professional singer to high school art teacher. Here's Nicola to explain how that happened.
While I was in America and I wasn't doing as much performing, I was doing a lot more, I suppose, art, textile stuff, sewing, making things. And when I got back to Australia, I was chatting to a friend who's a painter, professional painter, and she said, well, you know, you're an artist, you're just swapping. You've gone from performing arts to fine art. And I'd never thought of myself as that because everyone else in the family, all the kids and my husband, they're all very artistic, you know, they all draw and they're all very creative. And I always saw myself as someone who sang, not someone who was a visual artist.
Yeah.
And I thought about that for a while and I thought, yes, I really enjoy this. I think there's something exhausting about having to continually be, I suppose, that performative nature of having to go to auditions or show up. And sometimes that gets exhausting and you feel like, I just don't want to do that anymore. And I really started to love the idea of that quiet creativity of making things and developing stuff that had my own voice in it rather than what somebody else wanted me to say.
Yeah.
So I was going on a tour with my daughter who was looking at going to fine art school. And she was like, oh, no, I don't want to do this. I don't think I'll do this. And I sort of thought, I might. That looks fun. And I did fine arts at UNSW and loved it. And so I graduated from that. And then there was a little blip when I got cancer.
That's a blip?
Yeah. And I'm fine and it was caught early and everything. But I suppose while I was sitting there for 6 months having chemo and got really bored, I suddenly thought, oh, maybe I should teach. You know, maybe I could be a teacher because my mum was an art teacher. So I decided to look into a Masters of Teaching. And so I did double visual arts and you do education subjects, you do, you know, psychology. I did a lot of special education stuff because I have an interest in inclusive education. So neurodivergent, gifted, learning disabilities. I did a whole bunch of that as well.
Is there a good connection between art and that interest? Like
Maybe there is.
Yeah, I wondered if
I suppose there is. It's funny. Last year when I started teaching, I was working as a casual and I ended up working a lot at a local high school in the support unit. And a bunch of those teachers were either primary school or art or drama teachers, and they'd all ended up in support. And I really loved it. During my final prac at the school that I'm now teaching at, I had worked with their transition students, and they are students with learning disability. Some of them were just amazing artists, and I just was really kind of interested in how we learn differently.
How long have you been doing that for now?
I have been a proper qualified teacher with an ESSA for a whole year.
Yeah. Now back to Ben and him recently joining the ranks of the paramedics, studying but also being out on the job. What has been the most satisfying aspect of that work so far?
Firstly, seeing the experienced paramedics do their thing has been really great to see. The profession's in good hands because there's some really, really good clinicians out there. And just seeing them operate and compiling a picture of how I would like to be as a paramedic ultimately. So that was really good. And the patients there's just so many different presentations of what can and does go wrong with people and their reactions to it. And you know, what you and I might think might be being in pain, a 1 out of 10, someone else might think it's 20 out of 10. So you've got to adjust with every single patient and just get beside them and be in their shoes, I suppose. That's a challenge, but it's something that has been really enjoyable.
So there must be an important balance to strike between empathy and real care for people, but also a kind of objective distance from the situation.
Yeah. And that's what some of the experienced paramedics that I've worked with have said. You need to it's pretty hard to switch off completely, I'll be honest and say that. Yeah. There'll be times where it hits you, you'll do something, then you'll debrief about it, and then it might be driving home and all of a sudden it just hits you what you've gone through, or the next day or week. So it's difficult to divorce yourself completely from that. But in saying that, it is really important to compartmentalise it as much as you can, to understand that you can do what you can do, and there's some things you can control and some things you can't control.
From your experience so far, and it's early on in your journey, you get called out to X number of jobs. How many of them are kind of pretty minor and not very traumatic, and then the ones that are obviously much more serious?
It depends on where you're stationed and also who you're stationed with. So I did a placement with an intensive care paramedic crew. We got called to the...
That's always heavy.
Yeah, really high acuity ones. That was really interesting. As a general duties, like a graduate paramedic, I'll probably get the more bread and butter type jobs. But it's important when you talk about big jobs and little jobs, to the person that's making the call, every job's a big one. Yeah. And that's tricky too. You could go from a cardiac arrest to a paper cut, and we're told at uni and in practice that you've got to treat them exactly the same, really, because they're the patient, they're the ones that need your services. So that's an interesting dilemma to deal with sometimes, because you think, you're taking up the phones and there's limited resources, but ultimately they've called for a reason. They haven't just called for fun, they've called for a reason.
This is Life and Faith, and we're talking about late career changes. Nicola finds herself away from the stage and now in the classroom. She mentioned earlier that she'd gone through treatment for cancer. I wanted to know if there was a link between that experience and her making such a significant life change.
I think I am very different now because of that. Yeah. Before I was sick, I was just going along and doing the degree, and that was lovely, and I had a lot of support from the family and they were all really excited I was doing it, and it was great. But I think when you're sitting there just waiting for a scan to say, or a blood test to say, yep, it's going well, or it's gone, or it's come back, or whatever, you suddenly think, oh, what do I actually really want to do, and am I going to just go back to my normal habits? And I feel like it made me braver to say, okay, I might be in my 50s, but I still can teach, or I can still do something that is useful.
Tell me, what are the most satisfying aspects of your job now?
I really like seeing girls discover, it's a girls' school I'm at, but I really love students, you're seeing something click over in their brain. I remember when I was teaching last year in the support unit, and this student was connecting to mathematical, because I was actually teaching maths and science and English in this particular support room, because you're teaching different classes. Yeah. And she made this connection between two mathematical ideas. Just the look on her face was like, oh, okay, I get that. And I thought, wow, that's such a, it's a big, huge win for her. And that felt really good, that I had somehow perhaps, I don't know, someone else might have done the prep work, but I had sort of, opened that up. I mean, I do love the creativity of it. There is a performance aspect to teaching. You have to be on and present information in a way that the girls can pick it up and connect it to something else they know. So I suppose in a way you do plan out a show. in some ways. A lesson plan is a storyline for them to get.
Ali Joy went through a lot to get herself through nursing. Has it been worth it? We get a pretty clear sense from her about how she feels about the change.
What I've really loved, like as a hairdresser, I was working as a sole trader, as a mobile hairdresser. So working just by myself, really. And then so I'm really loving the team collaboration, and it just calls you into being a better character in yourself. You have to be more situationally aware. Like the team are just amazing nurses and doctors. You work very closely with the doctors, and it's a way that I can serve the community. I've lived in Lennox Head for 20 years and I now live a bit further south, but it's really beautiful to be able to be there for people in there. No one expects to end up in emergency on a night out. They might get a bit of chest pain at dinner and then have to drive in, or paramedics bring them in. And it's their acute moment in life, that they're in there.
I feel like you're a very community-minded person, so you're sensing that you can play a role in your community.
Yeah, it's interesting though. So I came back from the ship thinking, I'll start studying nursing. And because I do have faith, whenever I make a decision, I always pray about it. So I prayed and went, God, do you want me to do nursing? And I actually felt like he said, no, I want you to keep hairdressing. And that's a way of serving the community too. So I kept doing that for 6 months. And then one of my friends actually signed up for nursing, and I got quite jealous of her. And I was like, jealous in a healthy way. Like I was like, I want to know what you're
Healthy jealousy, yeah.
What you're doing. Yeah. And I think if you're considering a career change, you get whispers in your heart, or you get this feeling of a healthy dissatisfaction with the ordinary, and you're like, there's got to be more. And so then I signed up in 2021 to do nursing, and I continued to do hairdressing throughout my degree.
It's a lot to change careers in the way that you have. What did it involve? Like what kind of sacrifice, what training? How'd you get through it?
To do nursing, it's a 3-year full-time degree. So I started full-time and loved it when it was full-time, with all your group of people that you get close to. And then because of COVID and the flood situation in Lismore, they put a lot of our study online, and a lot of people dropped out. I'd say over half the people dropped out. And then I slowed it down a little bit. They also changed the whole way that they taught. They changed the whole structure of the university degree when I'd started. So that was a really hard thing to work through. And so I just dropped down to part-time for a little while. I actually paused halfway through my degree because I wasn't sure if it was actually what I wanted. Financially, it impacts you a lot too. So there's a lot of things to consider.
The change of careers, no, you don't take it on lightly. But at this point where you're sort of pretty early on in your nursing career, is it feeling like, this has been worth it?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't sit down and punch the numbers and go, what am I going to earn as a nurse? I don't really work like that. I make my decisions more out of a heart decision, because I want to be with people that are sick and people that are on the fringes and stuff. And I think when I first started, I did my first month. I got my first few pay slips, honestly, Si, and I was like, is that all you get? But a few times I've left work and just gone, wow, I can't believe that I'm actually a nurse. This feels really surreal. And then when you're sitting with someone who's really sick and you feel that you are really impacting their story, it's worth it. Yeah, I'm really glad I've done it. I love just being able to touch my patient's shoulder and just stop and say, I'm here, you're safe. It's good you've come in to get checked. Those moments are really good. I looked after a homeless man the other day. He came in and he'd been found fallen next to a public toilet. He's been on the streets for a lot of years. I was washing his feet and just sort of cleaning him up to see what condition he was in. And in that moment, I thought, that is my true heart. That is who I'm made to be, to serve people and love people. And so, there's been moments like that. And also you get so inspired by working with other people that are highly skilled. It's really amazing to see the team around someone. If someone needs the whole team to save their life and you just see them in action, it's quite a beautiful dance to watch. They're amazing at what they do.
No one on the show today has found the transition to a new career easy, even if it's been worthwhile. So what's the hardest part of their new job? First Nicola, then Ali, then Ben.
It's tiring, the energy required. And I thought that was because I was older, but all the other teachers are younger and they all say, oh, no, it's tiring. The hardest part is having lots of balls in the air, juggling, trying to plan ahead and think about what each student needs. And it's the individual needs of each student in a classroom, because you've got a comprehensive classroom that might have a student who's got learning difficulties or has ADHD or dyslexia or vision problems or all sorts of things. So learning to make sure that you are hitting the mark for all of those students, that's something I'm having to balance and learn a bit.
Yeah.
And knowing when to kind of have time away. Like, it's very easy because I love it. I'll happily sit there and work at night, but telling myself, no, I need to actually stop. But that's also because I'm a new teacher, I think, because I'm still picking stuff up. I mean, actually, you know what the hardest thing was feeling like I was too old. It worried me at first. I was really worried when I went for my final prac. I almost felt like apologising that they got the old lady. But then I realised actually it was a bit of a superpower because the girls don't give me as much of a hard time as I think the youngest teachers get because they think I've been teaching for years. And I suppose because I've dealt with teenagers, I've got young adults now. I know kids. I may not be as experienced teaching, but...
If you imagine what you would have been like as a teacher before you became a mum, and now having had all that experience, it would have certainly shaped you, wouldn't it, in the way you relate to the kids and how you think about the job?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm much more patient. I am much more able to put things in perspective because as a person, I'm much more settled. I don't think I actually would have been a very good teacher when my kids were little. Mm-hmm. Part of me thinks, I wish I'd done this earlier because I love it. But then the other part thinks, no, there's a reason why I didn't do this because I was doing other things. And I probably wouldn't have been as focused.
Well, if nothing else, you would have been so exhausted and sleep deprived.
Well, I think about my mum because my mum was a bit of a role model because she was a nurse and then became a teacher when Whitlam made education free. So she'd got a bursary to be a nurse and then went back and did art teaching. And I went along with her, actually. I remember going to classes with her as a very tiny child. So I think I'd always had that idea that it's never too late to change. You don't necessarily have one job your whole life. And she taught for a long time and then she changed and became a dressmaker and all sorts of things. So I feel like I've had good examples of people who do that. And also having a family and a husband that are very much like, go for it, this is fantastic, we're really proud of you. That really helps. Because that when I'm not feeling very confident, they're like, no, stop it, you're fine. What's your evidence that you're not doing this well enough? So you do doubt yourself a bit.
I just came off my first 4 night shifts and, when everyone else, is asleep at night and you're driving to work at 10 o'clock at night and you're finishing at 7 to go home and sleep. I think that's definitely the most impacting on your own health. And the stress too, there's a lot of stress. And I think exercise, good diet, good support around you, like you have to keep those anchors. Yeah. In any job, but in this job especially. So you need to keep your health really strong to be able to serve in the way that we do as nurses.
Going to the first cardiac arrest was pretty intense. That was the first time that I'd actually seen a deceased body on scene, and we tried to save the individual and were unable to. And seeing that unfold, a healthy guy had just gone for a walk that morning, came home, and that was his time up. That was quite confronting because it just hits you really quickly. And then also the talking to the wife and the son and daughter that were there at the time, the adult son and daughter that were there at the time, and the paramedic that did that did a wonderful job of, showing that empathy as well. They often say that families and patients, but in this case, families remember, those words that are spoken to them at that time probably for the rest of their lives. So you want to make sure that they're
well-chosen words.
Well-chosen words, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And has there been one that you were, high-fiving at the end? It was sort of satisfying.
Yeah, there are some that feel satisfying. I don't know if I've high-fived, but I've certainly felt kind of good where you learn the theory and then when you can actually roll that theory out and see the patient actually it makes a difference, that's quite cool because not every job you go to you can do something that has an immediate outcome. When you can give a drug or change a posture or something that will give immediate relief, that is quite satisfying, yeah.
The motivation for changing careers is very different for different people. You might just hate your job or be so sick of it you're desperate to get out and do something different. But that wasn't the case with today's guests. Each of them spoke warmly of their previous roles. Each felt some kind of prompting or higher calling or encouragement from people around them. And that stood out in these conversations.
People have said to me when I've told them what I'm doing, "Oh, that's really good, Ben. You're giving back. It's good to give back." And maybe a bit controversial, but it's a term I don't like. I don't really like that term in the sense that it's predicated on I've been taking all these years.
You haven't done anything yet. And now you suddenly, right.
Yeah, and I think it's more about sort of serving, which is consistent with my faith in loving God and loving my neighbour as myself. So that's sort of like, well, yes, I'm doing something. I suppose it's a well-regarded profession, paramedicine, and it's something that people have a general interest in. But I think it's important that, I don't identify as a paramedic first and foremost. I don't. It's something that I think I can use my skills that I've been given with empathy and with, interpersonal skills, talking to people, and then learning this new skill set that I have. So, hopefully I can make a difference there to people's lives. But that's not to say that other work that's not in a direct healthcare setting is not equally as important and equally as loving. Whether I feel called to it or not, I think probably I do. There's enough events that have happened in my life that have pushed me in this direction, and I've had enough doors that have opened to date. So I'm quite open to where it'll lead, to be honest, yeah.
I don't know if I'd call it a calling, but I do feel like, the school I'm at the moment is a Christian school. And I do love the fact that they very much walk the walk, that you do feel like you are teaching the whole girl, and that the staff are very supportive, and that's part of it. But when I was teaching at government schools, I remember chatting with another younger teacher who was doing a prac, and she was a Christian, and we were saying that there is something interesting about acting out your faith without proselytising and using words, but actually showing, I suppose, for want of a better word, Jesus-like actions, the acceptance of somebody, of meeting somebody where they are, of just supporting kids and supporting people. Because a lot of the time, these kids, you forget that they're, no matter what school they're at, private or public or whatever, there's a lot going on in their lives, and they're teenagers. And they might have parents that are breaking up. They might have friendship problems, all this sort of stuff. And I suppose being an adult that they know they can rely on, and being someone that you can, I suppose, model behaviour and model kindness and love and compassion, and answering their questions when they ask, in honestly and being kind. I think that's, to me, is the part that I suppose will be closest to a calling.
I honestly don't think, if I didn't have faith in a Christian God that's loving and present and part of your journey, even in the decision to do what I've done, like anyone who's considering changing careers, like I just want to say to them, like, you've got a unique set of giftings. Each human being is different, but each one is unique. And I just think that the goal of life for me is to be truly who I believe God has made me to be. And so I naturally want to be with people when they're dying and sick. I like being on the fringes with people that have had a bit of a harder story. And so the whole way through, in pausing to consider whether to study and then praying about it and trying to listen to what I feel God's saying, has been a big part of my journey. And those moments where you're fully stretched, I'll drive to work sometimes if you are tired, or even with my exams, like I'm going to go to this exam, and as a woman of faith, I'm like, okay, God's with me, he's called me to this. So I do draw upon that a lot. Like, I think if it's only up to you as yourself to make a decision, or you as yourself to do the work, I think you'd easily go into burnout, any of us could. Yeah, it definitely has influenced my decision for sure.
So with these guys experiencing all the ups and downs and challenges of changing careers in later life, what would they say to someone contemplating such a shift? Here's a final word from Ben.
I'd say do it. A lot of my mates have actually said to me, or they laugh, they say, they're only a few more overs from retiring, and they say, what's going on, Benny? We should be surfing and doing fun stuff in retirement, and you're diving into this. But equally, a lot of friends of mine have said that they would love to do it. If they had an opportunity to do it, not necessarily paramedicine, but just a complete change and shift in doing something new. So I'd say just do it, because it's just learning new things. It's hard. It's definitely hard. And the older you are, does make it hard to retain information, and not going to lie there. But it's extremely rewarding when you can just learn a whole bunch of things that you didn't know before and use those. So I would really encourage people to seriously consider it.
This has been Life and Faith with me, Simon Smart. Thanks so much to our guests today, each who have made a significant career change in recent years. Ali Joy, moving from hairdressing to nursing. Ben Somerville, who made the leap from customs broker to paramedic. And Nicola De Vries, who for a long time was a professional singer and is now a high school art teacher. Thanks to each of them for telling us their stories. And for pulling all this together, thanks to our producer, Alan Douthwaite, who has had so many career changes that his story could warrant a whole episode. We should get that in the schedule. Thanks for listening. Please share this episode with someone you think might appreciate it. Next time.
My babies, when they're nursing, never care if I've had meetings on the Hill with congressmen or senators in my day job. They don't care if I've written a book. They're pre-literate. What they want is for me to be there with them. The goodness of being is deeply relevant for children, and it's relevant for all of us, but they're kind of our reminder that someone might be happy simply because we are, and not because of what we do.